Hi guys, so I wanted to come on here and share my story of this. I'm terrified, but I think that we have to be brave brave enough to tell our story, in the hopes that it might help somebody else. So I'm just gonna get into it. I'm gonna try and make a long story short for them as best I can, but it's quite a long story. So it started when I was 15. I'm 26 now, and I contracted glandular fever. Glandular fever is like it's a virus, and I had tonsillitis around the same time, and I had to be put on steroids because my tonsils were shutting. I ended up having them removed. I had about 3 months off school, and I remember it was quite hard recovering from the glandular fever, but I did it, and I got back to school and did my GCSEs. I left school. When I was 16, I had a Sunday job. I worked as a waitress, and I was at work one day and I passed out, and then what ensued was just months of feeling horrendous. I developed this really strong, burning, horrendous pain in the middle of my chest. All my limbs and back, like my shoulder blades would burn, and I just didn't know what was happening to me. I went to the doctors and they said it was anxiety because I'd mentioned this pain in my chest, and I said, this can't be anxiety, I feel horrendous. I was put through psychological therapies that suggested that everything I was experiencing was in my head, and eventually it got to the point that I was practically bedridden. I wasn't completely bedridden, but it was very obvious that something was very physically wrong with me, and I wasn't being referred anywhere. My GP was hopeless. I don't think they really believed that I had something worth considering for a rheumatologist. So I ended up my family are really into vitamins and things like that, so we knew of Dennis Gore, chemist in Manchester, and he's always been a fountain of knowledge for our family, and we went to him, told him how we were feeling and how I'd been, and he referred us to a specialist privately. So I went to this specialist who was a consultant in pain management, and I went to his house. I think it was in Cheshire. It was in Hale in Cheshire, and it was this huge mansion, and I went to see him. I had to pay privately, and he immediately said that I had chronic fatigue, ME, and fibromyalgia, and he diagnosed me with duloxetine, which is a antidepressant that treats pain, neuropathic pain, and I was put on a neuropathic painkiller called pregabalin. Being put on the duloxetine was horrendous. I had sleep apnea. I felt horrendous. I can make another video on that if I need to. But basically, these tablets took quite a while to work, but after about 14 weeks on them, I started to notice the pain subsiding, more energy, and it kind of happened quite quickly after that. Obviously, I'd been through a lot and I had a lot of anxiety, but I managed to go back, do my A-levels, and I think I'd just turned 17 at this point. So I went back to college, and in 2012 my GP said to me that these drugs that I'm on cost a lot of money, and you know, moving forward with my life, I really don't want to be on them long term. Again, I don't think they really believed how bad I was without them. So I started to reduce my duloxetine. I ended up in a lot of pain again. Needed to stay in bed a lot, hardly any energy. And I had quite a tumultuous relationship at the time. And I come off the duloxetine. I managed to get off it, but when I went back on it, it didn't work. So from the end of 2012, literally the last time I went out, I'd broken up with my boyfriend and I kind of made myself go out in town. I felt horrendous. That was New Year's Eve 2012, going into 2013. And that was the last time I went out for 3.5 years on my own without it being a medical appointment. What ensued was me becoming bedbound, practically bedbound. I had to like gather enough energy to just go to the toilet. Usually I could only go to the toilet twice a day, once in the morning and once later on, but I had like a bucket in my room. Very often I would have to bathe in my room on my floor. I just managed to get out of bed and my mum would bring me like a flannel. All my food was brought to me because I couldn't get up. This pain in my chest and all over my body, what the doctors have called it like costochondritis as part of the fibromyalgia. It was just agony, like all over my body. My heart rate was just insanely high. I think I measured it once and it was 145 beats a minute, just lying down. So any hospital visits that I made were, I had to go in a wheelchair, and it was kind of just that I had to be in like the fetal position. Going out the house was one of the most horrendous things that I could possibly do because I could barely even muster enough energy to have a bath. At my worst during that time, I could only speak about 3 sentences a day. This pain in my chest actually affected the muscles around my vocal cords. That's how the doctor described it to me. And they were fatigued as well, so it took so much energy and pain just to be able to speak. I ended up doing the Perrin technique with Raymond Perrin himself. He is one of the world's leading figures in the ME community. He has his own diagnostic technique for ME, and his technique is based on sound scientific evidence around the lymphatic system and ME. I went to Raymond Perrin for 2.5 years during that time, between 2013 and 2016, and I developed with Raymond what can only be described as a really good friendship. Raymond Perrin helps people with ME, and it is a private treatment, but I've seen people get well. I've met people who in the time they were seeing him have improved, and he has practitioners that work for him, and he is doing trials with the NHS. I think his diagnostic for ME, being able to diagnose ME, is one of a kind and something that the NHS is definitely lacking. He also does a treatment, which is a Perrin technique. I went from driving to the Perrin clinic like, with my head on the window and barely able to speak, and basically dragging myself there with somebody else driving. Of course, there's no way I could drive. Going down the stairs on my bottom, like just about getting myself in the car, parking right outside the door so I could go in, and basically just holding on to my mum in the waiting room. I went from being like that to being able to get to the car and sit up, go in there, have the treatment, walk back to the car, and then get home, get back in bed. I didn't have much improvement in the Perrin technique, but I believed in it so strongly because I believed in him, and I've seen people get well from it, and I do think that it's an amazing thing I just know that it doesn't work for everyone, and it didn't work for me, even though I believed in it. We spent over £3,000 on the Perrin technique, and honestly, I don't have regrets, because the journey's the journey, and Perrin's a great guy. It got to 2016, and I realised that the Perrin technique slowly wasn't going to work for me. Something else had to be done, and in this time I had been trying different things. Any vitamins I took, they always made me worse. I don't know why. I think it was something to do with my digestion, maybe. I did the Dr. Michael protocol. I was injecting B12, magnesium, taking all these different supplements. I was very sensitive to a lot of things like that. I also thought that it could be Lyme disease. I had my bloods taken by a nurse that came from my GP, and I paid privately to send it to Armin Labs in Germany to check for Lyme disease. I went to see an infectious disease consultant, all these different people. As I was able to get out of the house with the Perrin technique in a wheelchair, I did as much as I could. Thankfully, we had the financial ability to do that as a family, but nothing worked. And in 2016, I watched Alan Titchmarsh on TV, and I saw Martine McCutcheon, and she was talking about the lightning process and how she'd been really ill with ME, and she got better. Or she was on a journey with it, she said, but she'd improved remarkably with the lightning process. Now, I'd heard about the lightning process quite early on into this intense period of illness, and my brother actually mentioned it to me, and I thought it was offensive. The idea to me that you could get better with your mind was suggesting to me that the illness of ME or fibromyalgia, tachycardia, all these things that I was presenting with was in my head. And telling me that I could get better with my mind just aggravated me and made me feel like it was going backwards. When it got to 2016, 3.5 years had passed since the last time I'd gone out in 2012. I'd spent most of that time in bed. And I heard Martine McCutcheon talking about the lightning process. I decided to do more research. Something about her speaking out about it made me feel like I had nothing to lose. I'd already tried everything else. I'd done the body thing. I wanted to start looking at my mind. I had never been diagnosed with depression up until this point whatsoever. I actually hadn't been diagnosed with any mental illness whatsoever, which the doctors thought was, my GP thought was remarkable considering everything that I was going through at the time. But I was on a lot of medication. Obviously, I'd gone back on the duloxetine, I was on pregabalin, I was on a lot of these pregabalins took for anxiety as well. I was quite numb. So I phoned the practitioner for the lightning process. It was a practitioner in Bury. I spoke to her about the course. It was a 3-day course, 4 hours each day, and I knew I'd have to go in a wheelchair. I ended up booking on the course. A week before, I rang and said, I'm too ill, there's no way I can do this. There's no way I could sit somewhere for 4 hours, let alone like have to travel there. And she said to me, you don't have to do it, you don't have to come, you don't even have to pay the money, but you want to get well. Trust me, come, no matter how unwell you feel. I think you should come, like you're going to get better. And the way she spoke to me, I just found truth in her voice and what she said, and I trusted her, and I felt like I needed to make a leap of faith. So I felt horrendous going. It was awful. And my mum took me. I went in a wheelchair. after the first day of the lightning process, I was doing it all night, and in the morning I came down and ate my breakfast on my own. I came downstairs and I made my own breakfast, and I sat on the couch and I ate. I noticed I was quite tingly, like I felt like something was happening. But this had happened before. Like, I tried something new, and even though I wasn't like wandering downstairs, sometimes I would feel like, oh, it's working. So I thought it might just be that. It might be a bit of like a placebo effect or something. I didn't, which interestingly is part of the lightning process and the power of the mind. But after the second day, we decided to go for ice cream, and we parked the car next to Frederick's, and I walked in and we had ice cream, and I walked out and we got in the car and we went home. And after the third day, I said to my mum, I'm well. And I didn't take my wheelchair the second day. I didn't take my wheelchair. After the third day, I said, I'm well and I want to start looking for cars. This sounds so unbelievable to anyone who is hearing this, and if you told me this story, I would think that it wasn't true. But I am not affiliated with the lightning process in any way. One of the reasons that I've been so scared to tell this story is because the lightning process is so controversial. I don't want to get involved in any of the controversy surrounding the lightning process. I just want to tell my story. I'm not affiliated with it. People have said to me, you've had this amazing recovery, why don't you go out and talk about it? Why don't you like be an advocate for M.E and the people? And I haven't felt strong enough mentally, and I've said I spent so many years embroiled in M.E and fibromyalgia and illness that I just want to live my life, and I know that I will come back to this, and part of doing that is this video. I will help people, but I have just wanted to kind of leave it in the past. So anyway, after the third day, we went to a garage where I'd been looking at, the night before actually, I'd been looking at cars on Auto Trader. And on the third day, we went to a garage and we looked at it. We looked at a little Fiat 500. And I think I took it for a test drive that day as well. Yeah, I did. I took it for a test drive. I rang my dad and I said, I want to get this car. And he said, I think you should wait to see. He hadn't come on the course with me. My mum had come with me. You're allowed somebody on the course with you. And she'd seen all the changes in me and in the people who, you do it in a group of 6, all the other people who'd made changes, and she knew that something amazing had happened in that time. And we rang my dad and said, I want to get this car. He said, you need to wait until you're well for longer, and we don't need to buy a car right now. My mum spoke to him and she said, like, this is different. She's well, like, this is the thing that's changing everything, and we need to help her. We're gonna help her out. So we came back on the Saturday and I got my car and I did the lightning process the 27th to the 29th of April 2016, and since that point my life has been an amazing roller coaster of ups and downs, and I felt like a baby trying to walk again. One of the quickest things to recover since doing the lightning process was my body. I felt like the first thing that went was the pain. Building the energy and stamina came next. That was the next thing that really felt like I'd made huge improvements so quickly. One of the things that I did struggle with was my beliefs, believing that I was well, and my anxiety. I'm coming up to 3 years post course now, and I've spent that time learning how to believe in my wellness, and one of the hardest things has been the anxiety. And although the lightning process helps so much with that, it is work. There's no point doing the lightning process if you're not ready to put the work in every single day. I have to do it every single day, and some things that I've worked on consistently I don't have to do every day. But when then a new thing occurs, like I reduce my medication and I face new challenges, and I have to do new things with my lightning process and develop new pathways. So basically, what is the lightning process? The lightning process is a neuro-linguistic programming technique that uses the brain and the brain's ability to be malleable and form new pathways. Basically, what research has shown is that we used to think that the way you were born, your genetics, or the way you were raised formed the pathways in your brain and they weren't changeable at all. What we've actually realised in science is that the brain is completely changeable. When you create new habits, you create a new brain. The brain is the computer, the processor for everything that happens in your body, and if you create new pathways in the brain, you change your body, you boost your immune system, you lower inflammation, you can eliminate pain. One of the documentaries I would recommend is Heal. I think it's actually on Netflix. That was amazing. The lightning process saved my life. No doubt about that. When about 6 months ago, I reduced my antidepressant after coming off 2 others of my medications, because I'd actually gone on another one before I did the lightning process called low dose naltrexone. I come off that, I come off the pregabalin, and reducing the duloxetine was hell on earth. I could do a whole video about that in and of itself. I faced new struggles with the duloxetine, and the anxiety was intense, and I went to my doctor because I felt like I could do with some help psychologically, even though I had my lightning process. I was struggling, and it helped immeasurably with the side effects, but I did get referred to a psychological unit. I did get referred to a psychological unit as an outpatient, and I was diagnosed with PTSD from the time that I was ill and everything that I've been through. Now, the lightning process can be used for PTSD, but sometimes you can need more. Sometimes you do need to revisit your practitioner and go back and do different techniques if you are suffering from PTSD. So I'm still in the process of that. I've started EMDR therapy for my PTSD, but I do consider myself physically and mentally well. At this point, I'm building confidence with my anxiety, being away from home, relying on myself, really believing that I'm well. But I can walk miles, I can do whatever I want in the day, and the lightning process saved me. And I wanted to tell my story because for all those people who have tried everything else, or maybe are just coming into their journey with ME or fibromyalgia or all the other illnesses that this process helps, such as OCD, phobias, depression, anxiety. There is a way out. And I never would have thought that my recovery would happen so quickly. Even though I have struggled with my mind since, my body was the thing that was on the floor, and my body was the first thing to recover. And I can only tell you what's happened to me, and it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. Please don't leave me any negative comments. I am not affiliated with the lightning process. If it didn't work for you or you've done it, there is no one size fits all. All I can say is the people that I know who've done it have dramatically changed their life. And I think personally it can help everybody in dramatic ways. And it's not about perfection, it's about improving and working on yourself and having the life you love. And it is possible. And I really hope that the ME community can start to see the lightning process for what it is. Raymond Perrin used to visit a guy who was bedridden, and he said to me that I was probably the second worst person that he'd seen in his career. And he's been treating people with ME for 30 something years. I was in a wheelchair, mostly bedridden. I once spent 3 months in bed. I think that my story should be listened to. I got well with the lightning process, and that's just the truth. So if you have ME or you have fibromyalgia, I made this video for you because you don't deserve to live your life in bed. You don't deserve what's happening to you. And you will get better. This is not the end. This is just a dark patch. You will recover. And I promise you, if you can listen to one thing, this is worth doing. And that's it. I hope that this video helped someone. Oh God. I hope this video helps someone, and please share it if you know somebody with this disease. I am not affiliated with the lightning process. Do it, don't do it. This is just my story. Love you guys. Bye.